So I think it's fair to say with 5G that we're probably not as far forward as we thought we might be at this time. I think there are lots of reasons for that. The pandemic was certainly one. I think that slowed investment in 5G, or the investment got shuffled elsewhere, for example, into fibre. I think we realise that it's a lot more complicated than we thought in terms of 5G just being part of the next generation and its need to work with lots of other connectivity and technologies like AI and analytics and many more things. And also on the human and organizational and structural side, working in ecosystems is a new thing for everybody concerned, and it's a lot more complicated the more we understand about it. The great thing is, though, we are understanding more and more about it and making really good progress. And I think this conference, well, so far, has shown that 5G stars do seem to be aligning. So let's look to the future a little bit with our keynote speaker, who's Yogesh Malik, CTO of Tele2, who's going to talk to us about the impact of 5G by 2030. Yogesh, delighted to welcome you back. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Annie. So I think where are we? I think it's very important to take a step back and to see. And here we have plotted not only data capacities, but also the user behavior. And things have turned out very different. The common theme over time is we are extremely connected as a world. And we are going to get even more granular when it comes to connectivity. And we can see different examples, we can see different ways, but it's very clear that we are living in a changing world, and COVID has cemented that view. As Tele2, our purpose is to enable a society with unlimited possibilities, which means you can do multiple things where the base is extremely stable and you can do extreme businesses. And we have done that. We have done that with automated delivery mechanisms. We have done that with electronic boats. We have done that with extreme user immersive experience. And our ambition remains to be the leading telco, a leading telco in Nordic and Baltics. And we believe that we can do that in a sustainable way. And there are many ways beyond the base connectivity. And the base connectivity does bring a lot of speed and low latency. What we believe, in order to achieve digital efficiency in our businesses, especially in the enterprises, we can do a lot more. We have 4 pillars for our success to become the leading telco. The first pillar is superior customer experience, which means speed, latency, time to response to a customer complaint, and to reduce the repeated complaints in a very significant way. The second one is employees. Actually, the employees give the customer experience. So we should be focusing on employees, and that's what we are doing in Tele2, to make sure that every employee contributes to the customer experience. The third pillar is stakeholder return, that we can actually demonstrate with our operating cash flow, with our EBITDA, with our structural cost, a way that we can be sustainable going forward in a very concrete manner. And the fourth pillar is leading in sustainability, which is not only stakeholder return, but it is diversity and inclusion, from gender pay, balance, imbalance, transparency, to actually deeper diversity and inclusion matters. And our journey is the following: focusing on foundation, because we are launching new Gs. Now 5G is coming. Soon, later, 6G may come. We need to become very clear, not only foundation on the network level, but also on the BSS level, on the OSS level. It's very critical. And to enable that transformation with grassroots analytics so that we can make better decision and we can enable end-to-end digitalization. And the way we measure that in Tele2 is digital completion, which means that a customer can start a journey digital, but what we measure, if started digital, we can complete digital without physical interference. What we are aiming for is actually automation in such a way that we can come to zero touch provisioning, zero touch activation, zero touch help. We can come to that self care level where human interference gets reduced to a minimal level. That is our journey. And what 5G enables with this is we want to be the best network in Sweden. And what we believe, best network equals best value. And the experience becomes the brand. And for us, what connected experience can elevate with the best network is humongous possibilities. That is where we are in our journey. I thought it's good to be simple and straight and to
Okay.
be open for questions
Well,
because it's we have a lot of slides and we can present a lot of slides. We
yes,
can
we can.
present hyperscalers, we can present dilemmas, but I think it's important that we focus best network, best value. On top of that, we talk about brand experience, which is connected to our customer.
Okay, so what I think I'd like to ask you about first, and actually how very strange, we've got our first question from the audience, which interestingly is exactly what I was going to ask you. So that's quite strange. So it's easy to say, but how to progress automation and get to zero touch?
And here is where I think we need to embrace that network and IT are not two domains. They are very interconnected. And zero touch cannot happen without IT provisioning, order management coming together with network. I think it's very important not to discount the complexity in the network in the NSS domain and to connect that to the IT domain with provisioning and mediation. And I think that is what we are trying to do in Tele2 to make it zero touch, by which we can automate.
Mm-hmm.
If you are able to activate, you should be able to activate the service all the way to the deeper end.
Okay. What steps do you think need to be taken? What are the challenges when you're looking at achieving that at Tele2? What are the kind of things that you're tackling now and that you see as the next stage?
I think the first thing there is to be able to explain the why, because I think the why becomes very important before the how. Why are we doing this? It will help the customer, it will help us, and it will help eventually the whole value chain. And I think that explanation is critical for us in Tele2. On top of that, what I believe we can achieve with that explanation is new productization.
Okay, when you say the whole value chain, what exactly do you mean? Do you mean everything from your suppliers to customers, or do you mean like the life cycle, product life cycle, customer life cycle? What exactly do you mean when you say value chain?
Well, there is two sets of value chain, internal and external value chain. Internal value chain needs much more quantification, explanation, because it's a cultural change as well, what we believe. External value chain is partners which need to propagate their competence into our mix. And I think that external value chain is very important in simplification, consolidation.
Okay, so, and they need to be able to use automated, to use exposed capabilities in an automated way. Is that what you mean?
Also, and also, I think to bring in new capabilities because they have seen that in different other operators. For example, how do we do trouble ticketing in a seamless way? How do we make sure that trouble ticketing is not only a network operating function, but is also a field engineering function? How do we combine that? How do we make sure that the customer themselves can clearly solve their issues with the Wi-Fi routers? And how do we make sure our self-care application has those tentacles into the operation so that we can provide our customers with a better experience?
Okay, we have another question. Do you see Open RAN as a key pillar in network automation?
Once again, Annie?
Do you see Open RAN as a key pillar in network automation?
Well, I'm very open to open. Honestly, Open RAN scale is while being celebrated is at a different level. Bigger partners need to come to the scale where we cannot just open RAN, we can go into something called, which I call urban development zones to enable a digital economy more than that. So Open RAN to a purpose is yet a journey for us to accomplish together.
Okay, so so really it's work in progress.
I would say work in progress, but in a very unilateral way. I would say that Open RAN, if it beyond Rakuten, beyond Symphony, beyond Harmony and others, if we can come to a purpose that how can Stockholm become a better place with Open RAN? How can Göteborg become? How can Lithuania, Vilnius become? I think that is the place where we are in our journey. How can Latvia, Riga become a better place with Open RAN? It's not just reducing cost, it is a little bit beyond that.
Okay, so are you saying that you're still trying to find the answer to that question about how would Open RAN make it better?
I think what I am saying in many different ways is I am looking for a customer-ended solution, a developer-ended solution. And I think that connection between Open RAN to an open development zone, Open RAN to a safe society is where my brain is at.
So in a few conversations I've had in recent weeks, it's become clear that although telcos have spent horrible amounts of money on all sorts of alarm systems and KPIs, they don't necessarily have that much bearing on an accurate, they don't give an accurate reading necessarily of customer experience. And quite often they confuse things. And I would imagine also get in the way of automation. I mean, is a massive simplification of that the answer? I mean, do you think sometimes we're looking at the wrong indicators or performance parameters?
I can tell you, I think this is definitely a great question. I can tell you the way we think in Tele2. Number one, we start with the customer. So for us, customer experience holds very, very high, paramount to every decision. And what we see is actually if you improve the basics, which is best network, and for us, we are going to be the best 5G in Sweden. There's no doubt. There's no doubt in my mind because we had the design and we are deploying that very fast. Not only the best 5G from a customer experience, but actually from energy consumption because we are sharing our networks. We are the only telco in Sweden sharing networks, not only on the mobile side, but also on the fixed side. And how do we take that to the next level is our dilemma right now in terms of the fixed mobile convergence.
And do you think that operational and business model of you being the sole provider of the infrastructure, I mean, do you think that's a model that could be exported successfully to other countries? Or do you think there are certain characteristics of Sweden that it really suits the market?
I think it's a very complex question which involves regulation, which involves a lot of things. I think what I have learned here is that sharing is good. On top of sharing, how do you really open up the market is extremely important. And of course, we do not have three operators, we have four operators plus multiple brands. And I think the way we see what can be exported out is thinking in a way that network production cost, gigabyte production cost is extremely important. If there are four parallel gigabyte production, it is not going to yield value neither to the investor nor to the customer.
Okay, we have another question about automation. Our audience is keen to understand kind of the main pain points that you need to address to get along the network automation journey. And I'm just wondering, like, might that be a greater use of DevOps methodologies or move to cloud or?
Now, I think there are different ways. There's not one single answer.
No,
DevOps, be
no.
there.
Mm.
Agile, we have been there, we are there. How to do safe, we have been there, we are there. On top of that, I think automation has one thing is giving up also, not giving in. So giving up, which means a lot of developers develop applications which are central either to provisioning or mediation or to the maintenance. How do we automate those things? You need to give up the control. And what we call that is a base, which we call secure by design. And that is the journey we are on in Tel2.
So when you say you need to give up control, do you mean the individual vendors need to give up control or you need to give up control? I mean,
Both, Annie. It's not only individual vendors, it's actually
yeah.
developers. They need to document, they need to publish, and they need to uplift. They cannot be an obsolete Linux or Microsoft or other servers. They need to uplift. And we call that security uplift, which is commensurate to 5G ecosystem.
So I guess the key when you're talking about this and end-to-end automation is interoperability. And I mean, is that a greater use of standardized APIs and continuous testing? I
Yeah,
mean,
and we call that API first and digital first, so that we can
okay.
encourage everyone not to interact physically with us.
And when you say everybody, do you mean your providers or your customers, or who do you mean? So it all needs to be automated and in software, yes? In the interactions with you.
I think I mean consumers, I mean enterprises, but also the employees. They should feel easy. It's easy to interact. And that is the journey we are on. We call that digitalization to the very grassroots level.
So automation is foundational to self-service and self-care for consumers. Yes?
Exactly. And that's why we feel while digital first is a good milestone, zero touch, which means things can happen and they're happening in different ecosystems today. And I think we can make it happen in telco as well.
Do you know, can you give us any indication of how much self-service and self-care have impacted on telcos businesses in terms of customer experience, reduced cost, higher satisfaction?
Well, we see that. We have a great brand called Convic. If you go and Google that, you'll see
Right.
that Convic is very high. It's actually higher in brand attraction than the incumbent brand. So it's very high, and it has a digital sales of north of 69%. So north of 70%, you can say. And the digital self-service is very high. What we are working now on is to create the same dimension in the fixed mobile area as well.
Okay. So that presumably is far more complicated because it's there's more than one service involved.
Of course. And not only that, it involves Wi-Fi routers troubleshooting in a way that you do not need to wait in the customer line of the queue with the care. You can solve Wi-Fi routing by yourself by placing the Wi-Fi routers in different ways or ordering a replacement much faster.
So if we look forward to 2030, just over 8 years away, which in telco terms is not that long, what do you think the telco is going to look like in terms of being driven by AI, by automation, by analytics? I mean, do you think it will be nearly a zero-touch world, or will we have thought of more difficulties to solve by then?
And hence I presented my slide that we need to continuously work on robust foundation. Security is going to be key.
Hmm?
On top of that, I think 5G will enable extremely new interfaces on IoT and personal level and enterprise level. The way we see the world in 2030, we would best network mean best value, and a connected experience is what matters. And I think that is the way we see that, and that needs to be established not in an onerous way, but in a sustainable way. I believe Tele2, we can do that in a much more sustainable way than our competitors because we are dimensioned and having a very deep root of sharing in a way that we can share infrastructure while we can elevate customer experience with our services.
Okay, and with 5G, do you think it's going to have a profound impact on speed, on coverage, on reliability?
However, I was just reflecting 2G to 5G because I've been in these Gs.
Yeah.
5G does bring extreme speed, lower latency, higher IoT devices connected per square kilometer. And I think that is great. How do we use that is what we believe best network will give us.
Okay, tell us a little bit about how you see the edge progressing by 2030. We talk a lot about the edge. I think mostly we're still a bit confused about where it is and where it could be, or maybe not where it could be, but where it will be.
That's a great question. Edge is yet in a discovery phase, I would say, because edge has different dimensions. One is the dimension like gaming. That's where edge plays very clear. On top of that, there's a dimension of edge on physical security, which means how police services can use edge. Whether in UK, in Netherlands, and others, they have started to use edge servers just in the cars to enable the physical security in the commune or in the households.
Now, is that dependent on 5G, or could we have done that with LTE?
That's a good question. I think some cases could have been done with LTE Advanced, but 5G enables unlimited possibilities. There is no doubt. I mean, the speed of transfer, the speed of latency, the speed of getting to the very, very basic is different in 5G compared to 4G and LTE Advanced.
Okay. Another question from the audience. Does your automation journey consider the dismantling of legacy technologies and or legacy networks? And what would you identify as being that legacy? What would you describe that legacy as?
It's a great question and a multi-layered question. So on the enabler level, we see 3G shutting off first, and we see 2G coming off. 3G consumes a lot of energy on the enabler layer. On the system layer, it depends on the operator. We are switching off all the legacy. And then on the customer front, it depends on what code you're using. Are you web progressive or are you app progressive? Which way do you want to see? And we are seeing that in a way that we want to create white label kits for different brands and take that further. So that's the way we are thinking.
How far are you along with containerization with cloud native?
It's again a very good question. On the network level, on the functional level, I think we are there. What we are moving towards is being containerized and very productized on all the IT application. And Sweden as a country has a very strict regulation on what needs to move for 5G security as well. So I think that helps us and gives us a bearing point. But I think we are way further ahead in that thinking. And now we are creating an onboarding factory, which allows us to take applications from the older environment to the newer environment.
But I mean, I understand that there's a lot of nervousness around telcos moving network, especially to public cloud. But I mean, a lot of telcos build their own cloud to deal with that, whether you want to call it on-premise or well, it doesn't have to be, but it's something they control entirely rather than public.
Yeah, so there are two axes of your question, Annie, and it's true. It's true. We are in a dilemma. What does get clarified for us, because we are in Nordics and Baltics, there are certain regulations for applications which are different category, A, B, and C. Now, what we are also doing is enabling cloud at multiple levels, whether it is cloud for analytics, whether it is cloud for our business customers, and we use different partners. So I would say we are hybrid in that manner.
Okay. Okay. And what did you move first? Some of the IT applications and analytics?
Well, as I mentioned, I think it really depends. For us, workloads really matter. For example, provisioning workloads.
Yeah.
For example, how do we move analytics? How do we move next best action workloads? How do we do those things properly?
Okay. Well, we have come to the end of our time, Yogesh. Thank you very much. An interesting and very open conversation. No doubt we'll see you to future events. I do hope so. Thank you very much.
Thank you.